Two quick questions. How many times have you checked your phone today? And was what you saw only positive, only negative, or a mixture of both? Well, chances are, regardless of what you saw and what apps you used, it was going to be a mix. And that's for a good reason, which we're going to explore today. And I'm not here to demonize phone usage. I'm just going to use that as an example to address a major complaint that I hear very often. And one of my main missions on Mr. Clark's Classroom is to reinvigorate and encourage a love of reading again in adults. Reading physical books in particular. But a lot of people say they don't have enough time to read, and also that they spend too much time on their phone. So I'll try to strip away as much jargon as possible for this particular video, and we're going to focus on the idea and the principles behind what is called a Skinner box, or a lever box, because we can address both of these two concerns that I've just mentioned at once. Let me illustrate the experiment first, which was created by B.F. Skinner, which is why it's called a Skinner box, and then we'll go into more detail. So, first of all, let's put Mr. Mouse right here inside this box, just to illustrate what is going on. The setup is simple. If he becomes hungry and wants some food, then all he has to do is to press this button to potentially receive some food, depending on what experiment is running. So the first experiment is simple. Mouse 1 is hungry, so he presses this button, but no food comes out. He keeps trying again and again and again, but there's still no food, so understandably, Mouse 1 learns to give up. Button equals no food is the simple takeaway for Mouse 1. But then Mouse 2 comes along. And in our second experiment, he has the exact opposite experience. As soon as he is hungry, he presses the button and food always comes out. And then the more he presses the button, the more food comes out. And he presses it every single time and food comes out every single time. This experiment is taking place in the north of the UK, so he gets a pie every single time. But again, the key point is, Mouse 2, he learns that this is extremely reliable and there's no downsides. You press the button, you get some food. And that's, again, nice and straightforward. But Mouse 3 comes along, and this is the important part. So Mouse 3 comes along for our third experiment, and this time the rules change. He becomes hungry, and so he presses the button, exactly like the other two, except this time he receives food some of the time and receives nothing at other times. His reward, or lack of reward, varies. Sometimes he presses this, nothing happens. Sometimes he presses this, and he gets the pie. Mouse 3 can eat and satisfy his hunger, but he has learnt that he can't always rely on that button to give him food, and so he isn't sure when he'll feel hungry again. So, Mouse 3 learns to press this button compulsively compared to Mouse 1 and compared to Mouse 2, because his reward is unpredictable. For Mouse 3, the button equals the possibility of food. And over time, it's Mouse 3 that'll be pushing that button the most due to this intermittent reward. If he gets more food now, then great, he can just store it up for later when there might not be any, or when the button might not return any. So Mouse 1 has no reason to push the button at all. Mouse 2 reasons that he only needs to push the button if he is hungry, whereas it's Mouse 3 that is living in uncertainty. So to help manage that tension, he'll start to show repetitive behaviour over time, in this case pushing that button, which again over time will lead to a compulsive addiction to pushing that button, hungry or not in the present moment. And that same circuitry applies to humans. There's more to that experiment than what I've just described there, so please continue to research it if you're interested in things like behaviorism or dopamine receptors, reward circuitry, or other similar experiments. But for the sake of this video, you can probably tell where I'm going with this, really. But let's pop this phone into the picture to make it relevant to us. Except it's not really a phone conceptually. To us, it is a Skinner box. It's just another version of one. At least that's how our brain, our circuitry experiences it. I'll open up my phone and it could be a lovely message from a friend wanting to meet for a coffee, but it could also be a negative email from work because you didn't do something properly. But then again, it could be a positive email from work congratulating you for your effort. But then it could be your bank letting you know that your bills have gone up this month. But then it could be your food order is on its way. but then it could be that your food order is actually delayed, and then it could, and so on. Obviously, I don't want this video to be all about doom and gloom, and you can probably get the point that I'm getting at there. But this is how it ties into the wider message of this channel when it comes to encouraging a love of reading physical books in particular. So directly on this theme of screen time and phone usage, you might enjoy reading a book like Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. He makes it clear in this book that what we need aren't just little tips and little tactics to reduce our phone usage, but a change in the philosophy of phone usage at that deeper level, which is how you actually experience that phone on a wider scale, not just what you can use it for. And one of the many reasons why I recommend reading physical books in particular is because it's a very physically grounding process. A phone has endless possibilities, and it could be used to listen to a podcast, and then to send a message, and then to have a phone call, and then to play a game, and then to get bored and to play a different game, and then change the podcast to a different show, and so on. There's no limits. The phone is potentially everything that you could realistically want it to be, but equally, it could be everything that you don't want it to be either. It's Mouse 3's problem all over again. It's a Skinner box. So the phone isn't always good, and it's not always bad, but the feeling of the reward when it is good convinces us that it's worth refreshing the page over and over again if what we're seeing is bad or boring or just not satisfying in some way. But a physical book, it has clear limitations, and that's a great thing. It's one book, and it's on a topic that the author has written it to be about. It can't magically change before you into something that is completely different. And this is a wider point, which I might explore another time, but limitations are a good thing. They help to define what an object is or isn't, so then it's much easier to actually relate to it. If we're not sure how to relate to something, it puts us into a state of ambiguity and potentially anxiety too. And if we're expected to act as well, then, well, we can't be sure if we're acting in a positive or negative way based on what has actually been expected. We can't live a life avoiding anxiety and ambiguity, and it's the mark of a mature psyche and ego structure to be able to deal with those problems. And I've already made a video on that topic, so if you are interested, I'll leave a link below to that one, because I don't want to go too far off track on this video. But we can certainly minimize unnecessary anxiety and ambiguity. And hopefully, just by understanding the principle of what a Skinner box is and why it's so effective, then that knowledge alone can help you to spot the patterns that you might be falling into. There's a few books that I've already recommended on this channel that come to mind when I'm talking about a topic like this. I've already mentioned Digital Minimalism in this video, so if you want an easy and practical read, then I definitely start there. And I made a video too exploring this diagram on coping mechanisms and the vicious cycles that we end up finding ourselves in to avoid uncomfortable feelings that we're trying to avoid. So the primal wound would be, again, very, very relevant here. And likewise, I made another video still exploring a diagram to do with Viktor Frankl's amazing work in The Unheard Cry for Meaning. To make it directly practical for the topic of this video, we need to stop viewing our phone usage on a scale of success versus failure, and instead to focus more on fulfillment versus despair. So, for example, rather than just setting an arbitrary goal of reducing your screen time to under 4 hours per day instead of 5, focus more on the fulfillment that you are getting or not from those 4 or 5 hours a day, and then pay attention to your attitude regarding that experience. That same video will cover 3 different types of values, again, which could be useful for a topic like this. So that's just on the unheard cry for meaning. But anyway, that's it for this video. And here's the moment of truth where you can actually catch yourself. If you're watching this on your phone, what are you going to do next? It's entirely up to you, but you're at least armed with that knowledge now. So, with that in mind, I'll maybe see you in a future lesson. See you soon.